Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, hosted by the Near East section in the African and Middle Eastern Division of the Library of Congress. Today, we're marking the start of spring with the film screening, The Spirit of Nowruz, by the renowned documentary filmmaker, Farzin Rezaeian. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the chat box in your Zoom control panel. We will have time for questions at the end. Now, without further ado, I will turn the mic over to Dr. Lanisa Kitchener, Chief of the African and Middle Eastern Division, who will give us her welcoming remarks and introduction to the division of the Library of Congress. Dr. Kitchener, the mic is yours.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Library of Congress, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Dr. Lanisa Kitchener, and I have the high privilege of serving as Chief of the African and Middle Eastern Division here at the library. The Library of Congress is the world's largest library, offering access to the creative record of the United States and extensive materials from around the world, both on-site and online. The African and Middle Eastern Division of the library is home to three unique and interconnected sections: the African section, the Hebraic section, and the Near East section. The division is the center for the study of 78 countries and regions, from Southern Africa to the Maghreb, and from the Middle East and the Caucasus to Central Asia. Here at the library, we celebrate Nowruz each year by kickstarting our Persian book lecture series. This year, we are carrying the Persian book lecture series to even higher heights by hosting our first virtual film screening via Zoom. Today, we are delighted to share with you a wonderful documentary film, appropriately titled The Spirit of Nowruz, produced by a distinguished filmmaker, Dr. Farzin Rezaeian, who's here with us today. Through this platform, we are able to reach more people and more places and to share with them the richness, the beauty, and the diversity of our collections and the remarkable cultures from which they stem. Thank you for joining us today as we celebrate Nowruz, the beginning of the Persian New Year. I'm now going to put you in the very capable hands of the head of the Near East section, Joan Weeks, who will give you a short overview of the Near East collections and speak about Nowruz traditions in Iranic and Turkic lands. Thank you for joining us. Enjoy.
Thank you, Lanisa. I'm Joan Weeks, head of the Near East section, and I'd like to welcome you to our celebration of Nowruz and tell you about our section that builds and serves collections from the Arabic-speaking countries of North Africa through the Middle East into Turkey, Armenia, and Georgia in the Caucasus, and the Turkic and Iranic-speaking peoples of Central Asia, all the way to the Uyghurs in China. I'm so pleased that during the pandemic, we're able to serve our digitized collections, particularly the Persian language collections, with the exquisite illustrated manuscripts on the library's main website, and respond to researcher requests through our Ask a Librarian service. We're very pleased to celebrate the cultural heritage of the countries we cover with this virtual program, and today our focus is on the Nowruz tradition. As winter releases its icy grip on the vast Central Asian steppes, large numbers of Turkic and Iranic peoples celebrate Nowruz on March 20th, not only as the first day of spring, but also the new year. From Afghanistan, Iran, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Turkey. In the film, you will see how families and friends celebrate Nowruz, and many set up a Haft-Sin table in their homes, which can vary from country to country, but basically includes first, sabze, wheat, barley, or lentil sprouts growing in a dish symbolizing rebirth. Second, samano, a sweet pudding made from wheat germs symbolizing affluence. Third, senje, the dried fruit of the oleander tree symbolizing love. 4, sear, garlic, symbolizing medicine. 5, sip, apples, symbolizing beauty and health. 6, sumac berries, symbolizing the color of sunrise. And 7, sirke, vinegar, symbolizing age and patience. And I now would like to turn the program over to Hirad Dinavari, reference librarian for the Iranic World Collections, who will fill us in on the history of Nowruz and the Persian lecture series at the library, then introduce and interview the filmmaker Farzin Rezaeian. Hirad, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Joan, and thank you, Lanisa. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for attending our live film screening event. I'm Hirad Dinavari, reference librarian for the Iranian World Collections at the Near East section. The celebration of Nowruz and the renewal of nature is an age-old tradition. The Nowruz tradition that we celebrate today has its roots in the ancient Zoroastrian Persia of yesteryears. However, dating all the way back to the Sasanian Empire. Earlier dynasties and cultures also celebrated arrival of spring, going all the way back to ancient Mesopotamia. And spring harvest celebrations have been revered in many places, which highlights the significance that nature and seasons have played in human history. Today, though, we are delighted to focus on the Nowruz tradition that for roughly 2 millennia has shaped the cultural landscape of many Near Eastern and Central Asian peoples. I would like to seek the assistance and help of our distinguished speaker, Dr. Farzin Rezaeian, who can give us a little bit more information. He's researched and, as you've seen, produced a wonderful documentary film on Nowruz. And essentially, the amazing film that he's created comes with an illustrated, beautifully created book as well. But before we start the interview, let me quickly read his biography just to give you a little background. Dr. Farzin Rezaeian is an award-winning documentary, educational film producer and director. He studied sociology, political science, and communication at the University of Illinois in Chicago, and then continued his study of Iranian civilization and arts. For the past 20 years, Dr. Rezaeian has researched and written for many educational and documentary films that he has produced or directed at Sunrise Visual Innovations. Persepolis Recreated, Iran, 7 Faces of a Civilization, Discovering the UNESCO World Heritage Sites of Iran, Pasargade, Incredible Isfahan, and 5,000 Years of Iranian Engineering are his most recent productions. I would now like to take a second and ask Dr. Rezaeian to join us. There he is. Can you hear us?
Yes, sure.
Perfect. And I have a few questions for you, sir. It's very nice to see you. Khair maqdam migam, Nowruzatun Mubarak. It's very nice to see you. And to start for our audience, let's start with what aspect of Nowruz specifically, the tradition itself, motivated you and encouraged you to create this wonderful labor of love, this film? And why is it that with every one of your projects, you create these amazingly illustrated books that go with them? The Nowruz one is specifically very beautifully made. Thank you.
Hello and happy Nowruz to everyone. Please allow me to start with a saying by Sadi of Shiraz, a famous Persian poet who lived some 700 years ago. He said, "If there were no rose, the nightingale would not be singing in the grove." So I would like to thank our beautiful roses here, Lanisa and Joan, and also thank our dear friends, Hirad and Darian, who made this program possible. Now, going back to your question, well, there is this festivity which is synchronized with the beginning of a spring, with the rebirth and revival of nature. It brings joy and happiness to everyone. It promotes respect for nature, respect for the family values, respect for the neighbor, respect for the elderly. It brings forgiveness, peace, and reconciliation beyond race and religion. So at the same time, Jewish families, Christian families, Zoroastrian families, Muslim families, both Sunni and Shia, gather around their Nowruz sofra or Nowruz spread and thank God for the blessings on their Nowruz table. This is very beautiful, very colorful, and manifests the traditions and our beautiful culture of the Persian culture, Iranian culture, which has been spreading through a vast region. What could be more inspiring and more motivating to encapsulate all this together and present them in a book and a companion film for everyone to enjoy.
Fantastic. But of course, you didn't just stay in Iran. You went to huge efforts to film this in many countries, several countries, in fact, as we will see. Could you tell us how much of a challenge it was to film in all these countries, some of which are going through political turmoil, as we all know, and how long it took?
Well, you know, that Nowruz celebrations are held in such a vast region from Western China to the Balkans. And just like Christmas, Nowruz happens only once in a year. So we are a small company, independent company. We had to gather some 21 dedicated teams of photographers and film crew, both camera women and cameramen, and dispatch them to various regions in Iran and other countries. And, you know, getting visas, special permissions, and of course, financing them through these difficult times, especially partially because of the economic sanctions. I should tell you, it was quite difficult. But as Omar Khayyam reminds us, you know, we were able to manage and bring them to their heart's desire. But he said, when you and I with him conspire to grasp this sorry scheme of things entire, would not we shatter it to bits and then remold it to the heart's desire. So we were able to bring it to the heart's desire.
Wonderful. And last but not least, I have another question. I hear that after all these years of working on films and documentaries and books, you're actually moving into a new direction, that your upcoming projects are musical and theater and dance. Is it true? And could you illuminate us and tell us what the next project is?
Yes, I'm sure our viewers are quite familiar with Rumi and know that Rumi is one of the best-selling poets in America. One possible reason for this popularity is that his poetry brings meter, music, motivation, and merit. But never before has his didactic poetry and his spiritual stories been put together and showcased in a musical theater or an operetta. This is actually what we intend to do. So we have chosen some of his beautiful stories, such as the parrot and the merchant, the elephant in the dark, the snake catcher, the lover and the beloved, and put them together not only in a lavishly illustrated book, but also in a documentary film, but more importantly, for the first time, as an operetta, a musical theater with singing, dancing, and performers. And it is called Rumi, Illuminated by Love.
Fascinating, fascinating, fascinating. Again, thank you very much for responding to these questions and making time. I'm especially grateful that you allowed us and are working with us and allowing us to show the film to a large audience. So without taking much more time, folks, let's watch The Spirit of Nowruz, One Family, One Song.
I think we all recognize that nothing in our world is more necessary than the spirit of Nowruz. When we see all the conflicts around the world, when we see the plight of migrants and refugees, when we see the rise of xenophobia and racism in so many parts of the world, it is clear that we all need the spirit of Nowruz.
The Spirit of Nowruz. One family, one song. Beneath the deepest snows, the secret of a rose is merely that it knows Nowruz is near. That beautiful rhapsody of spring, rebirth and love is near.
Nowruz reveals itself at the spring equinox, which is the time of rejuvenation and joy. At that time, we anticipate the heavens to bestow upon us more rainfall, making the earth more compassionate to us. Thus, the whole renewed world will rejoice and smile at us.
Nowruz is an ode to spring, rejuvenation, and breeze of light. As the famous Persian poet Hafiz reaffirms, from the abode of the beloved comes the fragrant breeze of Nowruz. From this breeze, if you ask for aid, you kindle the lamp of your heart. Nowruz marks the first day of spring on March the 21st. The beginning of the Iranian New Year. This fragrant breeze of Nowruz is overwhelmingly inclusive and ascends beyond all ethnic, linguistic, and religious barriers. Thus, today, Nowruz is celebrated by over 300 million people in various countries around the world, including Afghanistan, Azerbaijan, India, Iran, Iraq, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Pakistan, Tajikistan, Turkey, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and beyond.
Nowruz Mubarak.
Nowruz is also associated with the spectacles of Jamshid, the most glorious of the legendary kings of Persia. His legend was recorded by the celebrated Persian epic poet Ferdowsi about 1,000 years ago and has been reiterated by storytellers ever since. In this epic story, Jamshid defeats the vicious and ruthless demons of darkness and brings hope and happiness back to the nation. This triumph of light over darkness was then called Nowruz, the new day, or the new light.
Symbolically, this festival signifies the victory of the day over the night, good over evil, light over darkness.
Today, as a reminder of Jamshid's triumph against the demons of darkness, people congratulate each other and joyously declare,
Navruzaton firuz bad, har ruzaton Navruz bad.
or may your Nowruz be triumphant.
In this moment of spring, nature is reborn. The powers of light overcome the powers of darkness. Voice prevails over silence and warmth over cold, which makes mankind rejoice.
Meanwhile, drums, special oboes, and trumpets, which are the instruments usually used in military victories, are jubilantly played in various countries. But is there any actual historical or archaeological evidence for the Nowruz celebrations? Possible clues depicting such an unprecedented multinational festivity could be found at an ancient city in the Iranian heartland, at Parse, or as the Greeks called it, Persepolis.
To this remarkable ceremonial center of a vast world empire, there came on New Year's Day, the vernal equinox on the 21st of March, many peoples, representatives of the various satrapies or governorships, which Darius had established in the empire. So they brought all sorts of things, from the Ionian Greeks to the Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Indians. It must have been a grand occasion to see the various people walking up the stairs, coming into these wonderful stone palaces, bringing their gifts in the presence of the king. This was Persepolis.
Their gifts of honor were presented to a Persian king who is depicted sitting on a throne, holding not a sword, not a mace, but a flower, possibly a lotus, as a symbol of peace and friendship.
Here's a marvelous embossed relief, which is a masterpiece of Achaemenid art. Well, that portrays the beginning of the royal audience, most probably at Nowruz or Mehragan ceremonies. The king is seated on the throne, while the ceremonial chief is offering an explanation about the procedures. After that, the gift-bearers would start their procession, and the majestic Nowruz ceremonies would start.
The continuity of Nowruz celebrations for over 2,500 years is a baffling secret. Old narratives tell us that over 1,600 years ago, in the Sasanian period, Iranians would sprout 7 edible grains at the time of Nowruz. Then, the one that grew taller was predicted to be more abundant in the new year.
The spread of Nowruz has to do with the fact that Iran, as it is right now, is only a small part of what once covered the extent of the Achaemenid or Sasanian Empire, or even, let's say, the outreach of Iranian culture beyond its political borders. So it is not surprising that Nowruz is found in the Balkans. It was not brought by the Iranians, it was brought by the Ottoman Turks. The Ottoman Turks, although they themselves were not Iranians, they adopted Iranian culture, Iranian literature, and they adopted also Nowruz Sultani, as they call it, the Royal New Year's Day.
Throughout history, Turkish people have been celebrating in Central Asia as well as in Anatolia, Nowruz, with a hope for new beginning, for a better future for all. This event is a clear message for peace, inclusiveness, and human solidarity.
Thus today, Nowruz is still celebrated in an astonishingly enchanting manner, in a vast domain. From the Balkans and parts of Eastern Europe to certain parts of China and even Mongolia. In Olgi, in Western Mongolia, for example, almost 1,000 musicians, young and old, gather every year. Harmoniously, they perform a joyous melody for Nowruz celebrations with their small yet magnificent string instruments. For centuries, welcoming measures of Nowruz have been held with the utmost glory throughout Iran.
Salam های جماعت سلام gözümüzde çok hoş geldiniz های جماعت yığışın gelin deyin gülün çalın oynayın های جماعت sayatı gelir bakın selamın gelir alın sayatı gelir bakın selamın gelir alın gelin gelin biz bir olalım sayatı yandır hayata gelin.
Hidden in the green vegetation of the Caspian region, special plays are performed to herald the defeat of winter.
Here we conduct the play of the giant versus the bride. The giant is a symbol of winter, while the bride represents spring. In this play, we defeat the winter and herald that spring has come so that the people can start their farming and cultivation.
Nowruz is a time of renewal. This renewal starts from the houses with spring cleaning. Sweeping ditches and cleaning watercourses are also very important. In Talish, for instance, while the men purge the water's path of dirt and mud, young girls and ladies scatter rose petals and sprinkle rose water over the running water.
Mubarak.
Other welcoming measures of Nowruz include colouring eggs, sprouting grains, and a special ceremony called Chaharshanbe Suri, or the Feast of Wednesday. This feast is held on the eve of the last Wednesday preceding the new year, and consists of piling at least 3 small heaps of shrubbery and setting them alight. Then all the members of the family in turn leap over the flames, reciting a short rhyme of good fortune. My pallor to you, your ruddiness to me. Thus they throw all malice and sorrow into the fire to burn and perish. But what is the rationale behind lighting fires? It is partly rooted in the Zoroastrian religion, which was dominant for much of the history of ancient Iran.
In the last 5 days preceding the New Year, we Zoroastrians have a special custom. we clean our homes and make preparations for the remembrance of our dead by inviting their souls or farvahars to our homes. Then, on the eve of Nowruz, before the sunrise, by lighting fires on rooftops and with our prayers, we bid them farewell and welcome Nowruz.
Lighting fires on rooftops to welcome Nowruz, which is still performed in Yazd and Kerman, has undergone some changes after the advent of Islam. It has metamorphosed by Iranians into Chaharshanbe Suri, or the Feast of Wednesday. This feast has been transferred from rooftops to streets and undergone certain changes, but the original custom was different.
The fires that are lit at Nowruz in the Iranian countryside, on the northern plains of Iraq, and on the beaches of Los Angeles burn up the bad luck and suffering of the previous year and carry the promise of future joy and a more peaceful world.
Today, on the eve of Nowruz, lighting fires, although for different purposes, is still customary, especially in Kurdistan. In the month leading up to the New Year's Day, acquiring gifts for the loved ones and Nowruz shopping, very similar to Christmas shopping, is very popular. But the most important Nowruz tradition in Iran is spreading a sofre. A sofre is a covering or cloth which is usually adorned with flowers, fruits, sweets, mirrors, and other objects. This spread has a connotation to Nowruz in the same way a Christmas tree has to Christmas. Although the articles on the spread may differ from region to region, the practice is shared by millions of people around the world. In Iran, the sofre is spread on a table or on a Persian carpet and contains 7 symbolic items whose names usually begin with the Persian letter Sin, which is the equivalent of the letter S in English. Senjed, dried Persian olive, also known as jujube fruit, for assessing matters under the aegis of wisdom. It is also mentioned that its fragrance stimulates love and passion. Sib, apple, for health and vitality of life. As the famous saying goes, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Samanu, a sweet pudding made from germinated wheat, for celestial force replete with power and potency. Sia, garlic, for its medicinal purposes and self-restraint. Serke, vinegar, for solving sour problems in our daily lives and adjustability to worldly circumstances. Sumac, for the organization of life supported by the pillar of patience. Its red color also represents the color of love and the alliance of hearts. And sabze, sprouted grains, for rebirth and profound respect for greenery and nature. Now let us see whether it is possible to discover any common feature among these 7 symbolic items.
Every item of the Haft-Sin must have these 7 features. First, it should begin with the letter Sin in Persian. Second, its name must be originally Persian. So any item whose name is not Persian is not welcome on the sofra. Third, it must have an organic origin. Fourth, it must be edible. Fifth, it must be accessible. Sixth, its name cannot be made of a synthetic word, like sabzi polo or other compound words. And seventh, it must be long-lasting so that it would endure throughout the ceremonies, which are held for 13 days.
Additional items that are frequently seen on the Nowruz spread are a book of wisdom, usually the Holy Quran or other scriptures, coins, a mirror, painted eggs, a bowl of water with a goldfish, hyacinth, and traditional confectionaries. During these auspicious days, many people journey to their temples, synagogues, churches, and mosques for Thanksgiving prayers. When the Nowruz table is set and the turn of the year, or Tahavile Sol, draws near, the family members sit around the sofre, usually wearing new clothes. They avoid expressing depressing thoughts and wish a year full of goodness, health, and happiness for everyone. O reformer of hearts and eyes, O director of the affairs of day and night, O transformer of life and human beings' destiny and conditions, transform our condition to the best and most splendid state. Gradually, the countdown for the commencement of the new year begins.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. نوروز مبارک!
Happy Nowruz to everyone!
نوروز مبارک!
سال نو به همتون مبارک باشه. این عید شما، کادوی شما.
After Tahavile Sal, gifts are exchanged. Then, visiting relatives, neighbors and friends begins. The elderly members of the family receive the visit first, followed by the junior members.
The ideals associated with Nowruz are truly harmonious with our customs and tradition. During the season of Nowruz, lingering grievances and quarrels are forgotten, and all the people strive to share the joys of the holiday with their families and friends and visit the elderly people to seek their blessing.
Nowruz knows no bounds. It crosses ethnicities, religions, language, mountains, forests, and rivers.
During the Nowruz visits in the Xinjiang region of China, we can see other unique customs. Here, the lady of the house pours some wheat flour on the guest's shoulder as an expression of well-wishing and blessings for the new year.
Nowruz bayramınız kutlu olsun. Nowruz is not just a holiday. It is a phenomenon that is based on the solid foundation of eternal values. The day when a man does not commit sin and does not violate the divine harmony. Therefore, this day is a true holiday for becoming a perfect person.
In Iran, the Nowruz holidays last 13 days. On the 13th day of the new year, called Sizdah Bedar, literally translated as out of doors on the 13th, people leave their houses to join nature and picnic outside. Perhaps the belief that it is unlucky to stay at home on the 13th was created to give the housebound added incentive to leave their homes and appreciate the unveiling of nature's beauty. On the day of Sizdah Bedar, folk dances are performed in various parts of the country, such as wood dancing in Khorasan. In Fars province, Kashke ladies and youngsters enhance the atmosphere of happiness and delight with their colourful and dazzling dresses.
We believe that Nowruz has the power to turn our good thoughts into good words, and good words into good deeds. The Spirit of Nowruz, which is celebrated these days, should remain with us each day of our lives, whenever we are, irrespective of our latitude and longitude.
As the sun sets, the Nowruz festivities draw to a close. But the spirit of Nowruz and its beautiful memories live on potently in the hearts and minds of millions of people throughout the world. But what is the secret behind the continuity of Nowruz, which has endured for millennia, despite various political and historical storms?
During the Soviet era, Nowruz festivities were banned. But after our independence, the people who had always preserved Nowruz in their hearts started to celebrate Nowruz exuberantly. Nowruz familiarizes us with a culture and civilization in which human beings learned that they should never become captives of hopelessness and depression. Thus, in this realm, no ritual can ever represent hope as Nowruz can.
Another reason why Nowruz is timeless is that it strives to increase joy among all human beings, irrespective of their color, race, creed, and gender.
This is our sofre, which is a combination of our Haft-Sin as well as our Pesa or Passover spread. We have mixed them together because we're Iranians first and then Jewish.
I'd like to express my best wishes to everyone celebrating Nowruz and wish them a Happy New Year.
Nowruz is a time of joy and festivity among different ethnic, linguistic, religious, and geographic groups. This special occasion helps bring people together in its spirit of joy, friendship, compassion, coexistence, and solidarity.
جگر بندی مرا کردی تو پاره و لیلی سبا مزار میرم جان لیلی دیدن یار میرم
In October 2009, in an unprecedented measure undertaken collectively by these countries, Nowruz was officially registered on the UNESCO list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity.
Nowruz celebrations take different forms depending on the region of the world you are lucky enough to attend them in, making them a perfect demonstration of the diversity and inventiveness of human cultures, an intangible heritage which is just as precious. Happy Nowruz to everyone.
Today, the Festival of Nowruz is celebrated by many people in a vast domain. The members of this huge family of over 300 million people resemble flowers of a single garden, the Nowruz garden, in which each flower disperses its own perfume to make this garden one of the most diverse yet fragrant patches of land in the world.
The Festival of Nowruz is a long-standing cultural tradition that welcomes the annual onset of spring that symbolizes a rebirth or renewal and hope and prosperity. Such festivals are, therefore, part of our civilizational heritage and link us to our ancestors across time.
Nowruz shines a light of hope and optimism by its message of a new beginning, of seeking peace through tolerance and promoting dialogue and reconciliation among peoples.
Nowruz promotes today's universally recognized values, such as peace, reconciliation, friendship, mutual understanding, respect for cultural diversity, tolerance, intercultural dialogue, and good neighborliness.
Its values echo those that we together promote at the United Nations every day and everywhere. Nowruz reminds us of what we have in common and the richness of our diversity. I wish all of you a prosperous, happy, healthy and peaceful Nowruz. And may its spirit of friendship, harmony and respect for nature serve as an inspiration to us all.
میرقصی و صبحم را با ماه میامیزی برگردن شبهایم خورشید میآویزی میرقصی و میچرخی در گردش هر دستم در آینه‌ات هستی در آینه‌ات هستم میرقصی و صبحم را میامیزی برگردن شبهایم خورشید میآویزی مویت باز میرقصد سرمست تو میرقصد عشق و غزل و حافظ عشق و غزل و حافظ در دست تو میرقصد میچرخی در گردش هر دستم در آینه هستی در آینه هستم میرقصی و صبحم را با ماه میامیزی بر گردن شبهایم خورشید میاویزی سرمست و شام در دست باد رویت بازار سرمست و شام در دست باد رویت بازار سرمست و شام در دست باد
Wonderful. Okay. That was great. Thank you. What a wonderful film. Thank you, Dr. Rezaeian, again for agreeing to join us and giving us permission to show your beautifully created film. I looked at some of the questions that were up on the audience page. One gentleman specifically, I will read his name, Mr. Dehqan Nayeri asked, thank you for the documentary. I was wondering if you did any research on Haft-Sin and AD giving, specifically because these rituals seem to be invented in recent centuries. So I really think his question is, a tradition like AD, Dadan giving AD, or the Nowruz events that we have now, are they really historic? Or are they more current sort of phenomena that have happened in the recent centuries, based on your work and research?
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me, and also thank you to all the viewers. Professor Richard Fry of Harvard University, we went together to Persepolis. And as you know, Persepolis was erected some 2,500 years ago. And there are reliefs, carvings on the walls and the staircases of Persepolis, as you have seen in the film also, that depict gift bearers from many different countries, from Ionian Greeks to Indians, from Babylonians, and some 23 different governorships of the Persian Empire. They all bring their gifts and present their gifts to the king. And this, according to Professor Fry and some other scholars, is happening on the day of Nowruz. So we have a depiction of gift giving going back to 2,500 years ago. And also in the Safavid court, back in the 16th and 17th century, this was also the case. So let's say the junior guests would give gifts to the senior member present there. But it was transformed in recent years, say in the past 200 years, from the Qajar period onwards. And today, the senior member of the family usually gives gifts and usually banknotes, to the younger ones. So yes, the gentleman is quite right. The giving of gifts goes back to ancient times, right. But who gives what to whom is quite new. It was transformed. Yes. Well, and of course, that makes everybody much happier, especially the kids who get all the cash.
Of course. Well, on the next question is sort of related. Another gentleman is asking, or lady, I'm not sure, I can tell from the first name, what was the reasons that made Nowruz seem or appear more of a feast And I kind of have a hunch that this may have something to do with the seasonal harvest celebrations that go back all the way to Mesopotamia. But it is true, if you look, it seems to have a feast component in every country it's celebrated in. Your comments, yeah.
As far as I recall, there were about over 60 different feasts and celebrations in the Sasanian period.
Yes.
Out of those, only a few remain: Nowruz, Mehregan, Yalda, and perhaps one or two more. So they are all forgotten. But generally speaking, people were quite happy and they were having a lot of feasts. And most of these feasts were somehow related to the nature, specific times for instance, the vernal equinox, that is happening right on the specific time, and Nowruz is, somehow synchronized with that. So it was Mehregan, and others. As I mentioned, Rumi tells us that I am joy, joy is me. So people used to have joyous celebrations.
Absolutely. And so, but last but not least, I don't want to take up too much time. One question that came out is the famous saying, we have sayings just like here, where they say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. One of the famous sayings besides Nowruz Mubarak is Nowruz Piruz. If you could take a minute and expand on the significance of Nowruz Piruz and what it really connects to, it would be great.
Thank you. Yes, it goes back to the legend of Jamshid. King Jamshid was one of the glorious legendary kings of Iran, depicted in the famous Book of Kings by our famous poet Ferdowsi about 1,000 years ago. And in this legendary story, Jamshid defeats the demons of darkness and falsehood in the day of Nowruz. And that's the reason people congratulate each other and say, Nowruz Piruz, may Nowruz be victorious. It's actually the defeat of darkness and sorrow by light and happiness. So in the rain, at dawn, at harvest time, I told sorrow to depart, for a spring has come, as the poet says. At this moment, if I may, I'm reminded by a maxim from Sadi of Shiraz, when his poetry is actually woven on a beautiful Persian carpet, and the carpet adorns one of the galleries of the UN headquarters in New York.
Right.
And the saying is very famous, and it was written 700 years ago, and it says, the sons of Adam are the limbs of one body, created of one essence. When the calamity of time affects one limb, the other limbs cannot remain at rest. If you have no sympathy for the troubles of others, you are unworthy to be called a human being. That's how Saadi reminds us. Please allow me to offer my respect and heartfelt sympathy to those who have suffered from this terrible pandemic, and hope that by the dawn of the next Nowruz, hopefully, sorrow and hardships caused by this pandemic will be over. Thank you.
Amen to that. Amen to that. I truly appreciate it. And I also want to take a second and thank you for allowing us to show your wonderful film. I've also put your information on the screen for all of the wonderful people who attended. Feel free to go to the website, sunrisefilmco.com, or email Farzin directly at sunrisefilm@msn.com. You can see this film in its entirety, plus the beautiful companion book there, as well as his other fantastic documentaries that he's created. By all means, feel free to go there. And I also wanted to thank you again, Farzin, for giving us, Dr. Rezaeian, for giving us the opportunities to show this live. This is new technology, new territory for us. Our Persian book lectures, exactly because of COVID, you mentioned last year, were canceled because we couldn't have any in-house events. You are our first virtual online Persian book series event. And it's a wonderful way to start. And thank you again for making this possible by working with us and allowing us to show your film. My pleasure. If there's anything else you would like to say, feel free.
Yes, may I also just finish by a prayer by
Absolutely.
Darius the Great. This is written on a cuneiform inscription back in 2,500 years ago. And he says, may great God, Ahura Mazda, protect our land from famine, from the enemy, and from the lie. Thank you very much.
It's a very famous inscription, absolutely. Thank you again, Dr. Rezaeian. I really appreciate it. And with that, folks, I just want to give a shout out for us, our division. Thank you again for joining us. Also keep a lookout for our upcoming Persian book lecture series events, as well as programs on our Arab world, Turkey and Turkic Central Asia, and the Caucasus for the Near East section, especially our Vartanan Stay Armenian lecture series, which will be coming up soon. So this is for the Near East, but also our wonderful Hebraic section lectures, Ethiopic on Ethiopia and Judaica lectures, as well as the African section's wonderful programs and lectures. For example, the Conversations with the African Poets and Writers series. We will be having more and more events. Now that we are working with Zoom and we're working online, we look forward to seeing you all again. We appreciate you being here. Thank you for joining us, and see you next time.
Thank you, and Nowruz Piruz.
Thank you. Thanks to everyone. Khoda Hafiz, Nowruz Hamegi Piruz.